there is a whole new economy out there called the gig economy, driven primarily by the fact that all of us have a mobile device, by excess amount of data that all firms have, and driven primarily by new platforms that allow for perfect match between supply and demand. And when I say supply, I mean supply for everything from rides, point A to point B, food that we saw today, Deliveroo. If you want to develop a website, you can do it on Upwork. If you want someone to do handyman work, you can get that as well. So on one side, we see that kind of notion of opportunity with having these very asset-light type of platforms that enable perfect match. But at the same time, there are significant challenges with these platforms. The main challenge is that while on one side, you need to compete on the customers, you also need to compete on the same gig economy workers. Because the same workers are working for Uber and Via and Handyman and Handy. What we're going to try to do in this work primarily is really understand how these gig economy workers, whether it's a driver, a handyman, or a bike rider working for Deliveroo, how do they make labor decisions? How do they make decisions? What motivates them? What are the main levers that make them work? Getting a little bit numbers. So I'll throw a few numbers at you in interest of time. 44 million people in the US took some work. 34% of the overall economy tried that. Numbers from today from The Guardian. 9.6% of the labor in the UK did at least once a week gig economy work over the last year. We're talking about boosting the economy by 2.7 trillion by 2027, and with the emergence of more and more automation, we expect to see that work that as we see it now is going to be more fragmented, and more jobs are going to look like gig economy work. So with that, probably you ask yourself, how is that different from freelancing? Well, not all that different. Gig economy is not new. People always had worked gigs, but today we have, when most people refer to gig economy, they specifically talk about new technology-enabled kind of work. What technology did here is it reduced transaction costs, reduced friction. If there is someone willing to do the work around you, it's very easy to match between that and that person. So who are these people? 70% are doing that by choice, and what I mean by choice, they start initially just as an attempt to try to see what it is. 44% became, that's their primary income. 50% of them are millennials. What's really the main difference? If many of us, when we make a labor decision, we make it once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe once in 7 years, for example. Here we talk about people that make decisions by the minute. And when they make decisions by the minute, they make decisions on where to work, how long to work, and also which firm to work. Many of them, and we're going to talk about later about multi-homing, many of them are switching between multiple firms. You probably took an Uber drive where the same driver was driving for Uber and for Lyft, for example. So while at the same time these drivers have many more opportunities, the level of complexity increased as well. When I say complexity, firms have the ability to continuously tailor the wages they offer each driver, to tailor the incentives they offer each driver. So for example, in our data, we had 8,000 drivers. We had 1,000 different wages in every point in time. So the complexity is increasing significantly, and with that, also the challenges we're going to try to address. We're going to try to address the very simple question. How do gig economy workers make labor decisions? Do we need a new type of labor economy? How can the platform influence their decision? Let me go first and try to talk about what are they doing now. So what they do now is surge pricing, basically moving their prices up and down as a way to incentivize more employees. Pre-announced bonuses. So they announce the bonuses in advance saying, during these times, that's what you're going to get. We have here an article from the New York Times saying how Uber uses psychological tricks. And so let me stop here for a second and say, I think that's a little bit like a cheap shot at Uber. That was the time where Uber was down, and it was easy to take a shot at them. We all use psychological tricks. All of you, we are an alumni event, so we know that all of you were students. You all remember the psychological trick we played on you called grades. And so they also play psychological tricks on them. Anyway, continuing, giving more data is another thing. There are also significant implications for policy. As we know, all of you are here in London, very close to the EU, or not far yet from the EU. We understand that, there are new regulations about what are the type of relationship we want to have with these workers. Are there any requirements for minimum wage? Are they allowed to multi-home and things like that? We want to be able to answer these questions as well. So let's talk about our study. Our study was done with a firm called VIA. VIA in London, you'll see them as VIA Van. We did the project primarily in New York. VIA is different than Uber in the following way. Uber will pick you from where you are and will take you to where you want to go. VIA will ask you to walk 2 blocks and pick you up from there and will drop you 2 blocks from where you want to go. It's the Israeli version of Uber. As an Israeli, I can say that. Anyway, what we have is data of 358 days, 500.5 million observations for each and every driver, for each and every point in time. We know exactly what wage was offered to them. We know exactly what they did. We know what they accepted and what they decided not to accept. And we take all this information and we ask ourselves, why shouldn't I just run it as a big AI system? Why shouldn't I just use data? So let me show you the first challenge. The first challenge is the following, once it's going to click. First challenge is the following. I'm going to draw on the x-axis the average offer that was made. And on the y-axis, the likelihood they accepted it. How do you expect it to be? You expect more people, as they pay you more, what are you expecting? You're going to expect people to accept more jobs, right? Only that it reverses later on. Why? Is it the case that drivers don't want to work as you pay them more? Or is it the case maybe that the decision to offer them more was already knowing that they're actually not going to accept it, something that we call endogeneity or simultaneity. So what we have to think about is how to solve that. I'm not going to go into a statistics class now, but believe me, we're solving that. We have issues around, I'm not going to talk about that, we have issues around the fact that we see only those who drove, and we cannot really treat them as a random sample. Not going to talk about that, but I'm going to mention we are addressing that. All of these slides were just to say everything we're doing is kosher. So if you ask yourself why it's complicated, it's exactly because of that. We're going to look at 2 decisions. One decision, shall I work or not? Then decision, how long to work? Because that's really the sequence by which they make decisions. So remember that, and what we're going to look at really 3 main factors. What's the impact of wage? As they offer you more, are you working more? Second one, as you earned more until now, are you going to work more or less? As you worked more hours until now, are you going to work more or less? So our wage, hours so far, and income so far. That's going to be. Wage is rational. You want people to work more as they earn more. Hours so far and income so far, not so rational. So let's see what we get. Drum rolls. Let's talk about the results. So the first result is the following. Work or not. So what you see here, green means positive impact. Yellow means negative impact. No color means not significant. The first thing you see is the more we pay people, the more they paid people, the more likely they worked. The more hours they worked, the more income they had until now, the less likely they're going to work. The more hours they worked until now, the more likely they're going to continue to work. Ask yourself, maybe that's just a coincidence. Let's have to see more. In fact, we see even the same when it comes to the number of hours worked. So the more they pay them, the more likely they continue to work, the more hours they worked. Unexpected, but really the surprising part is the last one, which we call inertia. It's the notion that the more hours they worked until now, the more likely they continue to work, and the more hours they worked. And you don't seem as shocked as you should, but it has significant implications for what it means for the amount of hours they work. As we see in more and more cities, New York, London as well, getting into that, trying to reduce the amount of these employees working. What we see here is significant inertia in their behavior. We see that the same for any shift we do. We see the same behavior. I will not get into that. We see similar behavior when it comes to across days. And so overall, what I want to take from this talk is 3 things. The interesting thing about these employees is that while on one side, they're looking for more flexibility. Most of them are working gig economy work because they want more flexibility. So we see on one side, yes, they are very rational. They are reacting to incentives the way you expect them to. But the interesting thing is they have significant income targeting, which means the more you pay them, the more they earn until now, the less likely they're going to continue, but also significant inertia. Significant inertia, which means the more hours they work for you, the more likely they're going to continue. It has implications for how you personalize payment. So for example, one experiment we do with VIA now is how do you actually convince drivers not to work rather than to work? How do you convince them to go off the road when they should go off the road? We can talk about also the implication for firms that are allowing multi-homing. As we know, one of the main issues with many of these firms is the fact that customers can actually switch between these, which has significant implication for Uber's share price. Uber's share price is under the belief that over time, they can actually reap more of that market. We don't actually see that. So what do you want to take? Significant inertia. These are rational people, but have significant income targeting effect. So overall, much more complex than just running one more data set. Any question afterwards, I'm happy to take offline. Thank you.